It is 3:14 a.m. The freezing rain is lashing against the ancient, unforgiving stone walls of Windsor Castle. The flashing blue lights of emergency vehicles violently reflecting off the wet cobblestones. While the British public sleeps, completely unaware of the chaos unfolding in the shadows, a catastrophic constitutional crisis is exploding behind the iron gates. The mainstream media is feeding you a carefully constructed narrative, telling you that Prince Harry was in London this week for a simple, harmless charity event. They are lying to you. We have the leaked security logs, and what they reveal will shake the monarchy to its absolute, crumbling core. Because at exactly 3:14 a.m., the Duke of Sussex wasn't safely tucked away sleeping in a luxury hotel suite. He was being physically intercepted, surrounded by two highly trained MI5 officers and the commander of the Royal Protection Squad, physically escorted out of the subterranean Windsor vaults under the direct, emergency orders of His Majesty King Charles III. Millions of pounds in a latent trust fund instantly seized. Highly classified diplomatic immunity stripped in the blink of an eye. Before we uncover the explosive, classified documents that triggered this unprecedented midnight raid, I need you to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel right now. The mainstream press will never show you this truth, and your support is the only way we can keep bringing these suppressed palace secrets out of the darkness and into the light. To truly understand the sheer magnitude of this midnight eviction, we must stop the clock, freeze the chaos, and rewind. We have to go back exactly 48 hours to uncover the hidden origin of this unprecedented royal execution. The global press corps didn't notice it. The relentless paparazzi missed it entirely. But the palace's forensic accountants, monitoring global financial movements with razor-sharp precision, caught the anomaly immediately. Deep in the murky corporate registries of Delaware, a state known for its impenetrable corporate secrecy, Meghan Markle had quietly filed an LLC under a carefully constructed shell corporation. But this was no ordinary business venture. The filing contained a bizarre, highly specific trademark request that set off alarm bells at the very highest levels of British intelligence. She wasn't trying to trademark a simple brand name or a lifestyle blog. She was attempting a staggering legal maneuver to claim copyright over the historical, physical contents of the Windsor Vault. We are talking about the private, deeply personal letters written by royal family members, ancient manuscripts, and priceless artifacts, all targeted for upcoming commercial use in a heavily funded, multi-million-dollar Netflix documentary. They wanted the ultimate inside scoop, a treasure trove of royal secrets to broadcast to the world, but they drastically underestimated the king's surveillance apparatus. By Tuesday morning, at exactly 8:05 a.m., the intelligence desk at MI5 flagged the Delaware filing, bypassing all standard protocols and sending it directly to the keeper of the privy purse. The economic and constitutional stakes were immediate, and they were terrifying for the crown. If Sussex LLC successfully commercialized these priceless crown artifacts, it would brazenly breach the Sovereign Grant Act of 2011, a legal catastrophe that would risk unraveling centuries of untaxed royal wealth and exposing the family's most guarded financial structures to public audit. The palace had to act, swiftly, brutally. There was no time for negotiations, no room for family sentiment. The gears of the ancient monarchy began to turn, grinding with a ruthless efficiency designed to protect the institution at all costs. Enter the Windsor Memorandum. This isn't just a piece of paper or a standard legal briefing. This is a formidable 150-page dossier bound in heavy red leather, sealed with the chilling authority of red wax, and drawn up in the dead of night by the Crown's most ruthless constitutional lawyers. I have seen the redacted transcripts of this document, and the language used is absolutely staggering. It is a masterclass in archaic legal warfare. Section 4, paragraph B of the memorandum explicitly invokes a nearly forgotten ancient addendum to the 1917 letters patent. This obscure legal mechanism states, with terrifying clarity, that any member of the blood royal who attempts to liquidate the Crown's private archives for foreign commercial gain, instantly forfeits their right to the grounds. Immediately. The document is brutal in its legal finality. It doesn't merely block Prince Harry from the vault. It legally categorizes his actions as a direct, actionable threat to the sovereign's security. Words like treason, forfeiture, and immediate revocation are weaponized within those heavy parchment pages, outlining a scenario where a prince of the realm is treated no differently than a hostile foreign agent attempting to plunder state secrets. The preparation of this document was a highly guarded secret, known only to a fraction of the inner circle. As the ink dried on the heavy parchment, the stage was set for a confrontation that would fracture the royal family beyond any hope of repair. The intelligence reports indicated that Harry was already making his move, utilizing old access codes and lingering loyalties among the lower-ranking staff to bypass the primary security checkpoints of the castle. He believed his bloodline granted him an invisible shield, an eternal right to walk the subterranean corridors of his ancestors. He was walking directly into a trap set by the very institution he thought he could outsmart. The heavy vault doors, forged from solid steel and steeped in centuries of untold history, were waiting. And so were the king's men. The atmosphere inside the palace corridors grew colder as the hours ticked by, a silent countdown to a devastating clash of wills. Every security camera, every motion sensor, every quiet whisper among the night watchmen was hyper-focused on the movements of the exiled prince. The Windsor Memorandum lay waiting on a mahogany desk, its red wax seal a glaring symbol of a father's ultimate betrayal of his son, or, depending on how you look at it, a king's ultimate sacrifice to protect his crown. This wasn't just an eviction, it was an excision, the severing of a limb to save the body. As the rain continued to batter the ancient stone of the castle walls outside, the heavy, suffocating silence inside was about to be shattered by a confrontation so intense, so deeply personal, that its echoes would be felt across the Atlantic. The trap was fully set, the legal framework for absolute ruin meticulously constructed, and Prince Harry, completely oblivious to the 150-page execution warrant waiting for him, was about to step out of the shadows and reach for a prize that would cost him everything. Which brings us to October 14th, exactly 2:14 p.m. before the chaotic midnight eviction, before the flashing blue police lights and the ruthless MI5 interception. There was a final, desperate meeting. A closed-door confrontation inside the late Queen's private drawing room at Windsor Castle. No royal aides were permitted inside. No private secretaries were there to take notes or manage the fallout. Just Prince William, Prince Harry, and the suffocating, heavy ghost of their shared, fractured past. Sources deeply embedded inside the royal household describes a scene of chilling, paralyzing hostility. The heavy ticking of an antique grandfather clock was the only sound piercing the thick, toxic silence of the room. Prince William stood rigidly by the ornate fireplace. The fire had burned down to white ash, casting cold, harsh shadows across his face. His knuckles were turning absolute white as he gripped the edge of the polished mahogany desk. He didn't yell, he didn't scream. The heir to the throne let his voice drop to an icy, deadened whisper that echoed off the damask walls as he slid the 150-page, red-leather Windsor Memorandum across the table. "You are selling our history," William reportedly said, his eyes locked onto his brother with the unblinking intensity of a predator cornering its prey. Harry, feeling the walls of the ancient monarchy rapidly closing in around him, reacted with sheer, explosive fury. He slammed both hands onto the table with a deafening crack. Palace insiders report the bloodshot veins physically pulsating in his neck, his face violently flushed with a dangerous mixture of rage, entitlement, and rising panic. Harry demanded unrestricted access to the subterranean vault, screaming that the history buried down there belonged to him just as much as it belonged to the crown. He invoked their mother. He invoked his birthright. But William simply turned his back. It was the ultimate royal insult, a physical manifestation of a severed bloodline. The conversation was over. A Privy Council injunction was verbally executed in that very room. Harry was told, in no uncertain terms, that if he stepped foot near the archives, he would be treated as a hostile trespasser under the sovereign's direct legal jurisdiction. But to understand why Harry ignored this devastating warning, you have to look at the immense, crushing corporate pressure closing in on him from the other side of the Atlantic. The Delaware LLC wasn't just a passion project. Meghan Markle had allegedly secured a massive, front-loaded financial advance from a major streaming giant. The media executives in California were demanding hard, irrefutable, physical evidence of royal corruption to justify their massive investment. They needed tangible, explosive artifacts. The highly publicized documentary project was stalling, bleeding money, and corporate patience was rapidly running dry. Harry wasn't just acting out of anger, he was acting out of desperate financial necessity. The walls were closing in from both London and Los Angeles. He needed a bargaining chip, an ultimate insurance policy against his own family to feed the insatiable media machine he had tethered himself to. And so, driven by stinging rejection and looming corporate deadlines, Harry made his final, fatal miscalculation. This brings us back to the freezing, pouring rain and the creeping shadows at 3:14 a.m. Driven by sheer desperation, Harry descended into the subterranean tunnels beneath Windsor. These are not simple basements. They are ancient, labyrinthine catacombs, lined with iron cages and climate-controlled vaults holding centuries of imperial dominance. The Windsor Vault is a fortress within a fortress, protected by biometric scanners, reinforced titanium doors, and an independent, off-the-grid power supply. But Harry believed he knew the blind spots. He believed he knew the archaic layout from his childhood explorations. He bypassed the primary thermal sensors, navigating the claustrophobic stone hallways with the desperate urgency of a man running completely out of time, convinced that the late-night skeleton crew of security guards would turn a blind eye to a prince of the realm. He was dead wrong. The MI5 operatives were already tracking his heat signature, the exact moment his foot crossed the threshold of the outer perimeter. William had already made the call, and the trap had been flawlessly executed. The commander of the Royal Protection Squad, flanked by two stone-faced MI5 operatives, materialized from the pitch-black shadows of the lower crypt. They did not bow. They did not lower their gaze. They did not address him as Your Royal Highness. Instead, they physically intercepted his path, their hands hovering dangerously close to their sidearms. The air in the vault dropped to freezing as the commander stepped forward, his voice a low, gravelly threat, informing Harry that his biometric clearance had been permanently zeroed out. When the intelligence operatives physically blocked his path, the crushing reality of his expulsion finally hit him. A prince, born into the absolute highest echelons of global power, was being physically corralled and subdued like a common, desperate intruder in his own ancestral home. The Royal Protection Commander produced a single sheet of paper, illuminated only by the harsh, artificial fluorescent light of the subterranean corridor. It was a preliminary cease and desist, but it carried the terrifying weight of the King's own signature. At that precise moment, Harry's latent trust fund, a massive safety net of £14 million quietly held in reserve, was instantly frozen. The financial umbilical cord to the monarchy was violently, permanently severed. He was standing in the dark, surrounded by armed intelligence officers, stripped of his vast wealth, his unrestricted access, and his highly classified diplomatic immunity. He was completely, utterly neutralized. But the ultimate question remains hanging in the cold, damp air of that underground tunnel, begging to be answered. Why? Why was Harry so incredibly desperate to get into that specific vault at 3 a.m? What was he looking for that was worth risking his complete, irreversible exile from the United Kingdom? What could possibly justify triggering a catastrophic constitutional crisis and forcing the king to sign an emergency order in council? Throughout this investigation, I promised to reveal exactly what the leaked intelligence logs uncovered. I promised to tell you what he was reaching for in the dark. It wasn't missing crown jewels. It wasn't hidden royal gold. It wasn't a multi-million-pound sovereign trust. It was something far more explosive. Something that could single-handedly dismantle the public image of the British monarchy overnight. It was a small, unassuming, faded, velvet-lined box, tucked away in the absolute deepest, most secure recesses of the Windsor archives. Inside that fragile container rested the undisputed holy grail of royal secrets. The final, desperate, handwritten letters of Diana, Princess of Wales, penned in a lonely, heavily guarded Paris hotel room, just 48 hours before her tragic, untimely death in a shattered tunnel. According to terrified palace insiders, who have seen the highly classified, heavily redacted transcripts, these are not just poignant farewells from a grieving mother. These tear-stained, frantic letters explicitly name specific, incredibly powerful individuals within the firm. They outline a chilling, paranoid narrative of relentless surveillance, institutional betrayal, and a very real, looming threat that Diana felt closing in around her in those final, frantic days of 1997. Harry and Meghan knew the exact location of this velvet box. They knew the layout of the archive. Most importantly, they knew these letters were the ultimate, undeniable trump card for their crumbling, cash-hemorrhaging media empire. They were attempting a stealth, midnight extraction of his mother's most painful, volatile secrets, echoing the exact same isolation and desperation she felt decades ago. The emotional manipulation was profoundly calculated, bordering on the sociopathic. By weaponizing Princess Diana's final, terrified thoughts, they intended to launch a devastating psychological strike against King Charles and Prince William, broadcasting a highly sanitized, commercially profitable version of a dead woman's grief to hundreds of millions of Netflix subscribers. They were not just trying to steal artifacts, they were going to sell her ghost to the highest corporate bidder. When Prince William informed the king of his brother's sinister, calculated intentions, a profound and terrifying constitutional shift occurred within the monarch. In that exact, agonizing moment, the compassionate, forgiving father was completely and permanently eradicated. Only the ruthless, uncompromising, the monarch remained. At exactly 2 a.m., the atmosphere in the royal apartments turned to ice. Flanked by grim-faced men in dark suits and the Crown's most lethal legal advisors, King Charles III walked briskly down a dimly lit, silent palace corridor. The sound of his footsteps echoed like a funeral march. He did not hesitate. He did not ask for a moment of reflection or paternal grace. He sat at his heavy, centuries-old oak desk, the very desk where empires had been managed and dissolved, and drew a bespoke gold fountain pen from his breast pocket. With a single, brutal, unrelenting stroke, the king signed the unprecedented emergency order in council. The thick black ink bled into the heavy royal parchment, sealing a bloodless constitutional execution. Immediately, across the palace grounds in a highly secured office, the keeper of the privy purse opened the ancient royal access ledger. This is a massive, leather-bound book that meticulously logs the names of those permitted by divine right to enter the king's private domains. With clinical, unfeeling precision, the keeper took a heavy fountain pen and drew a thick, impenetrable black line straight through the name Henry Charles Albert David. The ink dried, permanently, redacting his existence from the inner sanctum of the monarchy. Stripped of access forever, legally erased, banished. It was the ultimate, cold-blooded finality of a rebellious son effectively written out of royal history in real time. Defeated, deeply humiliated, and completely stripped of his impenetrable royal armor, Harry was ruthlessly escorted back up the winding, claustrophobic stone stairs. He was thrust out into the freezing, relentless rain, completely exposed to the elements. He stood on the wet, slippery cobblestones, entirely empty-handed, watching as the heavy iron gates of his ancestral fortress slammed shut in his face, the metallic clang echoing violently through the raging storm. The king has slammed the royal vault shut, locking the Duke and Duchess of Sussex out for eternity. The midnight eviction was an absolute, flawless tactical victory for the palace, a brutal demonstration of sovereign power that left no room for retaliation. But do not be fooled into thinking this war is over. This is not the end of the narrative. The real terror is just beginning to take root behind the heavily fortified, paranoid walls of Buckingham Palace. Deep within the intelligence corridors, insiders are absolutely terrified, whispering in hushed, panicked tones about a catastrophic blind spot in their security. Because dark, swirling rumors are already aggressively leaking out of the corporate boardrooms of California. Rumors that suggest the midnight raid might have been a carefully orchestrated distraction. Elite sources claim that Meghan Markle already possesses unauthorized, highly encrypted digital copies of those exact same Parisian letters, covertly photographed and smuggled out of the country during their dramatic, chaotic exit in 2020. A massive, devastating storm is rapidly gathering across the Atlantic, carrying the crushing weight of a total royal apocalypse. Will she pull the trigger and release the highly explosive Diana Diaries to the streaming giant? And if she drops that nuclear payload, exposing the darkest, most heavily guarded secrets of the last century, will the ancient, fragile British monarchy even survive the catastrophic global fallout? We are standing on the precipice of the greatest, most destructive royal scandal in modern history. And the mainstream media is desperately trying to pacify you, covering it up with fabricated PR fluff, charity photo ops, and manufactured smiles. If you believe King Charles was absolutely justified in signing that ruthless midnight order to protect Princess Diana's most vulnerable, private letters from being commercially exploited by a streaming service, you need to hit the like button right now. Do you think the king went too far, acting as a tyrant against his own flesh and blood? Or did he do exactly what a sovereign must do to protect the sacred institution of the crown? Let me know your exact, unfiltered thoughts down in the comment section below, because the algorithm needs to see that we are not going to let this explosive truth be buried by palace spin doctors. Subscribe to the channel and turn on all notifications immediately, because the mainstream press will never give you the full, unredacted picture. The Sussexes are currently backed into a dangerous corner. Their massive financial empire is hanging by a fraying thread, and their next move will be ruthless, entirely unprecedented, and incredibly destructive. Stay vigilant, stay tuned, and do not miss our next investigative deep dive. Because the midnight eviction was only the opening battle. The real war has just begun.